Te reo ererangi o te mānia. This episode was produced in Otatahi by Plains Media, with support from New Zealand On Air.
Today, the oceans hold their breath as we journey into Ringlet and the Day the Oceans Stop, by Felicity Williams, published by Ahoy, an imprint of the Cuba Press in 2019. Join Libby as waves of mystery, courage and wonder sweep us into an unforgettable adventure. Ringlet woke to find herself curled up on the sea goat's back. It was midnight and, except for the occasional twinkling umbrella fish hurrying past, muttering anxiously about the weather, they were far away from any familiar merworld habitats. As Ringlet stared into the lake of calm water, Lumpy Custard moved to the left of the current they were swimming on and stopped. In contrast to the marshy water of the silly pond, this lake was crystal clear, and it seemed to be going down and down forever. "Hey, no shilly-shally!" Ringlet poked the goat. "We stopped to eat, and that wasn't allowed. Not that we're going to tell anyone. We can't stop again." No matter how much Ringlet prodded or begged or repeated the only word she knew in sea goat language, "Cheap buds," Lumpy Custard refused to move. Ringlet groaned and crumpled her head on the back of the sea goat's neck. As they floated in the bottomless lake, something appeared, something elegant and conch-shaped, floating determinedly towards them. It came to rest where the current ebbed and flowed into the lake. The sign read, "Ninky's Boutique. Mare dog accessories, tail decor and embellishments," and written in wobbly letters underneath, "Plus 24-hour emergency care for mare dogs." There was something familiar about the sign. She shut her eyes and hit her wrist against her forehead. She felt the sea goat's tail wafting across her face. She sneezed, opened her eyes, and looked at the sign again. "Plus 24-hour emergency care for mare dogs." "That's my writing," she thought. "I've visited this place before. With a gold metallic 100% resistant to everything permanent marker." Chapter 9. Ringlet gives something away. Ringlet slid off Lumpy Custard and swam over to the door of the boutique. Everything was dark, except for the glimmer of a lamp shining from the inside. The door was the same one she had seen in her dream the night before, with the same gilded handle in the shape of a pair of wings. But the gemstones, except for 3, had gone, leaving empty holes. Ringlet grasped the handle and pulled. The door refused to open. She tried a second time, turned to leave, but the sea goat roughly nudged her back. This time she hammered on the door and rattled the handle. The only answer she got was the low tolling of a distant current and the frightful screech of the lurks as they emerged from their hiding places to begin their nightly hunting expeditions. "Entirely too close for my comfort, and I have nothing except a handbag to hit them with." Ringlet opened her purse. It seemed to be something you did when you were lost for ideas. She watched as the lollipops moved and rearranged themselves. A clang of locks was heard from within. A heavy bolt was lifted and the door opened, and a dishevelled merwoman appeared. "Sorry, dearie, I can't move as quickly as I used to," Ringlet gasped. "You're Ninky!" "You've come back." Ninky looked her up and down, taking in la pouf, and then glanced at Lumpy Custard. "Or rather, we have for you." "We?" said Ringlet. "The shop always finds those it needs to," said Ninky. "Come inside. I'm sorry, I don't remember. I'm having a little problem with... You're not closing, are you? She recalled the shop from her dream, filled with exotic and colourful goods. Now the shelves were empty and felt neglected, as if no one had the energy to look after it. Have you thought of advertising for customers? I'm not closing down, said Ninky. Not yet. There's some loose ends to tie up, and I'm expecting one very important final customer. But there's nothing for sale. I have one thing left, said Ninky, which I'm saving for the last customer. Ninky turned and floated up to the balustrade. Ringlet followed her. Upon entering the room at the top, she saw once again the drawers lining the walls. There were far more than there had been on her first visit, and the room was bigger inside than it had appeared from the outside. Along a vast corridor, the drawers seemed to go on forever. She shivered. I'm trying to get back home, she said, feeling a need to fill the silence. It started out as a race, but it's taking longer than I thought, and my Murdog is sick. Fading, said Ninky. No, I think it's the flops. Ringlet waved her arms in the direction of the shelves. Unlike downstairs, these still appeared to be packed full of knickknacks, plants and potions, and hopefully medicine. Can you please find the fading? Repeated Ninky. You must have noticed out there ever-increasing patches of non-flowing water. I was too busy looking after a hungry sea goat and a floppity Murdog. Ringlet urgently scanning the shelves. Before we arrived here, we got stranded in a huge stilly pond that went on forever. I ended up having to carry the sea goat through it. I guess I did. A serious look passed across Ninky's face. Sit down, dearie, and listen to me. You looked and smelled worse than a muddy puddle mermaid that day you wandered in. And I've dealt with my fair shares of those. I'm not a mess now, said Ringlet. I've been glamorized. She patted her head and leaned forward so that Ninky would be able to see an especially elaborate cluster of waterfall ringlets that dangled from the left side of her head. And then where she hadn't, Ninky's hair was frizzled out behind her like a silver waterfall. It looked like it had not been brushed for a very long time. I'm normally just ordinary, she said quickly, and I still would be ordinary, except that I met Platita, still a mermaid, the sixth one. And it was my lucky day that she looked after me, or at least Ninky raised her eyebrows. I've seen the shrines and the statues, Ringlet started again, but I've never seen any of them in real life, until now. The lineage of the Stellar Mermaids dates back to the beginning of time and the great Stellar Mer herself, said Ninky. They are the most glorious and powerful of all mermaids, but changeable, wayward even, which is why those shrines remain illuminated and why gifts are left. It is said that they can control the tides, the currents, even water itself, according to their whim. Wayward, said Ringlet. Whim? They answer to no one, said Ninky, and they do what they like, when they like. Coming and goey, said Ringlet. Stella means star, continued Ninky. And stellar mermaids are those who dazzle us, supposedly, she added. That would be true, said Ringlet, although at times I thought Petita was almost a teeny bit too dazzly. Her voice trailed off. Thinking of Petita made her think of Chignon, An unsettling vision of Chignon holding a shovel and surrounded by mountains of seahorse poop flashed into her mind. Platita got me a horse. A goat, actually. And told me to do stuff. Eat the garnish, for example. Stuff that, now I come to think of it, hasn't been that useful. Ringlet frowned as Ninky's voice pulled her back. I cleaned you up and off you went, she said. I should have given you the Jasper eyelashes, but they're limited edition, and I had no idea that the task was going to be so... Whose eyelashes? Interrupted Ringlet. Complicated. Ninky sighed. Ringlet scrambled around in her purse and held up the empty medicine bottle. You gave this to me for Isky, didn't you? But it's all used up. I gave him the last drop in the Shell Motel. As for how I remembered that, I was given a memory munchie by a kinner. She pulled the last of it from her bag. She pulled the last of it from her purse. It's a very old one, stale, she said, but I've already had a nibble and it worked. Let me see, said Ninky, reaching a craggy hand towards Ringlet. She took what was left of the cookie and held it in her hand. Just as well you didn't eat the whole thing at once, she said. And stale isn't the word I'd use. What then? Said Ringlet, wishing she hadn't handed the cookie over so casually. Ninky, who had said herself that she was a bit wobbly, might drop her pff. Her map back home to the Cuplands would be gone for good. Ninky swam over to a shelf and returned with a magnifying glass. It was carved from snail shell and embossed with gemstones similar to those that had once been part of the door knocker. She held up the cookie and examined it. Through the magnifying glass, Ringlet saw Ninky's eyes as they stared, unblinking, at the cookie. They were like deep magical pools. This cookie is old, all right. In fact, it's a relic from another era. Most probably the time of the Great Perturbance. It's rare and potent. The final bite is going to tell me where home is, said Ringlet, so I need to make absolute sure I don't lose it. She opened her purse and pushed it across, positioning it under Ninky's hand. But Ninky did not release the cookie. She swung the arm around with the cookie behind her, and at the same time bent forward to inspect the contents of the purse. What else have you got in there? She asked. Nothing much, said Ringlet. Some lollipops, a starfish, a deadish one, souvenirs from the Sea of Forgetfulness. Ninky looked horrified. No wonder you've got a memory problem. How did you wind up there? More importantly, how did you get out? Ringlet delicately extracted the cookie from Ninky's hand, placed it carefully at the bottom of her purse, and snapped the clasp shut. A foamy, thorny thing appeared, she said. I pulled myself out on it. It took forever. I was wrong then, said Ninky thoughtfully. Huh? Said Ringlet. So the first time I came here, what happened next? Because the memory munchie wore off just as it was getting interesting. Because I decided, even though you kept saying that you were the one, that you probably weren't. I asked myself, how would such a mermaid, so untidy, so disobedient, get to the upworlds? Continued Ninky. And even if she did get there, you must be confusing me with someone else. And found that which lies hidden in an upworld rock pool, as it has for hundreds of years. And then you went. I did? Yes, you took the medicine and you left. Oh, said Ringlet. That's initiative, not disobedience, isn't it? And thanks to that graffiti you scrawled on the shop windows as you left, said Ninky, the sea folk knew that there was someone who could look after their floppy merdogs. I don't have a single spare drawer. There you are, said Ringlet, marketing it. It works. So I went to the upworlds, except I didn't because I fell into the sea of forgetfulness. Ninky's words pierced the water like a needle. You didn't fall, she said. You were pushed. Ninky pulled on a long cord hanging from the ceiling of the room and manoeuvred herself up to where a jar of jasper eyelashes sat. Why would anyone push me? Well, if you are the one, said Ninky, and if somebody knew, there's a lot at stake. She pulled the jar off the shelf. There are those who, detesting the exuberant nature of restlessness, would seek to hasten the fading. I haven't the foggiest idea what you're on about, said Ringlet, looking up to where Ninky was hovering. She moved over to steady the cord at the bottom and watched as Ninky opened the jar and, with a pair of tweezers, took out a pair of dense black eyelashes. There's a lot of stuff up there, said Ringlet, letting the cord go. My mother. She was an inventor who discovered, among other things, ways of swimming sideways. The squareways movement, they called it, which revolutionized interoceanic travel. When she left, I took over. Shut your eyes, dearie, and hold still. Ninky placed tiny dabs of glue along the length of the eyelashes and pressed them onto Ringlet's eyelids. Jasper eyelashes. There you go. They stung. Look, it's kind of you to give me Jasper's eyelashes, limited edition and what have you. But all I want is for you to cure my merdog, and then, once there's a decent fullish moon, or even a 3/4 one would do, I'll polish off that cookie, pick up chignon, and be home before the lurks have sharpened their spears. Ninky kept talking. The sea goat will take you up as far as he can. There is only one entrance to the upworlds, and you'll know it when you see it. Then you'll need to find the rock pool where the flame lies. Ah, yes, I was going to ask you. A flame is a bundle of ignited gas, said Ninky, and then, seeing Ringlet's puzzled look. It's hot and dangerous in the wrong hands. You'll need to take care. That's all I know. Ringlet wished Ninky would stop telling her all this. It was information overload, in her opinion. She already had a plan, and it didn't involve a jaunt to the upworlds to get something that sounded like it ought to be a banned substance. I'm a wee bit tired of being told to do things. First it was sit on a throne, then I was force-fed a bowl of cold algae, then a race, a complete and utter fib. Because it's not. Which all proves, said Ninky, interrupting, that you are the one. I'm sure of it now. Ringlet opened her eyes. Ninky was holding a mirror in front of her. The eyelashes looked lush and extraordinary. She fluttered them. It was like two fans opening and shutting. If you get into a tight spot, said Ninky, shut your eyes and the jaspers will help you see. I'm done with tight spots. I'm telling you, I'm done. Ninky swung back with a surprising amount of energy. She pounded the water and spoke in a tone of voice that sent a wash of fear down Ringlet's tail. Listen to me, won't you? Don't you get it? The oceanic kingdoms are in jeopardy. She moves quickly, secretly, to complete her plan. Fadings, until now, have been brief, transient, but the 9th oceanic period of the fading is a mutation. It does not have an end. "Stop, you're frightening me," said Ringlet. "And these eyelashes are itchy. Can I give them back to Jasper?" She went to pull them off, but Ninky grabbed her arm and spoke in a voice even fiercer than the poisson française of Ms. Gelatinous. "The great eternal restlessness is fading," said Ninky. "She who sleeps must wake." She swam over to a small casement window that looked out onto the bottomless lake. A single star from the upwards had pricked its way through a bank of cloud and was reflected in the lake. Nothing was moving. The screech of a single lurk shot through the silence. Ringlet opened her mouth to say something, anything, and then shut it again. Sometimes words were useless, and this was one of those times. "Restlessness is everywhere. Everything new comes from it," said Ninky finally. "Without it, we are stuck." Ninky settled herself down and pulled a lace rug over her tail. "As the currents dwindle," she said, "some merfolk will notice, others won't or won't want to. But you only have to look. Have you looked, dearie?" "The kelp forest," said Ringlet. "Didn't look to, flash." "Indeed," continued Ninky. "Plants are dulling. Species have already disappeared. Fish are becoming sluggish and—" Ninky paused and pulled the rug up to her chin. "And there are those dreadful stilly ponds." "Meditative experiences improves well-being, don't they?" "Paralysis, more like," replied Ninky. "When every murdog has the flops, some of us will notice that our lower fins aren't working as well as they ought to. By the time this happens, it will be too late." "Too late for what?" "Just too late," said Ninky. "The oceans will sink into a stagnation from which there can be no recovery. 5 years ago, the Nexus bridges were engulfed by a huge stilly pond. The city decomposed and disappeared." "The Nexus bridges? That's where my friend Chignon comes from." Ninky looked at her curiously. "A few of the younger Mers were circuit training on the outskirts, may have escaped. But now that Stilly Pond is headed towards the tropical seas in the east." Ring opened her hands and studied the palms. "What did you say I had to do once I've got this flame?" "I didn't say," said Ninky. "I said I didn't know. You've got lollipops from the Sea of Forgetfulness. Don't lose them. They're going to come in handy. And secondly, the memory munchie. Don't waste the last mouthful on things that aren't important. You won't get back home without it." Ringlet squirmed. Ninky was giving her a list of instructions. Part of her wondered why, and part of her knew. "I need to go and get Isky," she said finally. "He can't stay outside all night. I know you said you've got no space left, but surely we can find somewhere. I've never been separated from him before, and how will I find you again? When I've done it, if I do it. Anyway, I'm not going to do it. Someone else will turn up. The final important customer you talked about." "That's right," said Ninky. "What?" "You." "Who?" "You." Ninky sank down and creased into a million folds. "You're the final customer." Ringlet swam over and curled up in front of her. She had a fluttery feeling in the pit of her stomach. "I'm old," said Ninky. "Soon I will travel on the current of a river, no return." "You can't do that!" Ringlet felt a stabbing panic. "I haven't the strength to hoist myself up to the top of the shelf again. But there is one last thing you could do for me." "One last thing?" "There's a shell," said Ninky. "It has the letter M on it. Inside there's a picture of my mother. I'd like to see her face before I leave." "You can't leave. What about the merdogs?" "They're safe. They're in a kind of hibernation on the shelf. Somnambula aeterna. The antidote is next to it. Somnambula awakis. When it's time,
Someone will put 2 and 2 together, and they'll be as right as ripples.
Ringlet felt annoyed. Ninky was threatening to drift off on an unreliable current, and then worried she would be leaving her with a colossal problem to solve, and then back to annoyed. It wasn't fair!
I was very young when she left me,
continued Ninky.
I used to be able to close my eyes and see her, but now I can't. I want to see her face one last time.
All right. Ringlet felt herself melting into a buttery puddle of hopelessness. I'll look for it. And in the meantime, why don't you have a snooze? In fact, we could both have a nap, and then tomorrow we can decide what needs to be done.
I've told you what needs to be done,
said Ninky.
And it can't wait until tomorrow.
Giving in, Ringlet swam up to the top of the shelf and began to look for the lost shell. On the 3rd shelf, she found one that was delicate and fan-shaped. The letter M bleached but still visible. The shell had slipped down behind a larger one. I found it! She cried, but there was no one to hear her. Ninky, her chin resting on her hand, had fallen asleep. Ringlet opened the shell. Inside were fragments of faded parchment. In front of her eyes, they floated out and disintegrated in the clutter of Ninky's workshop. Crabs, she muttered. She put the shell back where she found it and swam outside. She pulled Esky out of the pannier. I'll be back in a minute, she said to the goat. And I hope you can outswim a gang of hungry lurks. Back upstairs, she carried Esky over to the row of drawers. Inside, merdogs were neatly stacked up, wings folded behind their backs. With the utmost care, Ringlet pushed them together, making a space. She squashed Esky in between them. She stared into his open eyes and saw a look she recognized. It was the very same look that mermaids give to their dogs when they feel they lost themselves or in trouble. There had never been a need for words in those kind of situations. The merdog would simply know what to do. This time, it was her turn. She kissed the tip of her finger and placed the kiss on his head. She shut the drawer. Ringlet hesitated and looked at Ninky's empty hand. Then she opened her handbag. She took out the memory munchie, placed it on Ninky's palm, and closed the old woman's fingers around it. Your mother, she whispered. Then she left. The oceans may have paused, but our adventure is far from over. Join Libby
Next Saturday
at 9:30 a.m. as we continue exploring Ringlet and the Day the Ocean Stopped, by Felicity Williams, published by Ahoy, an imprint of the Cuba Press. Keep your curiosity alive and your hearts open, because the magic, mystery and wonder of the sea are waiting for us in the next chapter on Spin Me a Tale.